Hi everyone, welcome to the event. I'm just going to give it a few minutes just to let a couple more people join, and then we'll get started at about 2 or 3 minutes past. The presentation will be recorded and we'll be sending out a copy to everyone after the session as well. Okay, we've got a good amount of people join the session now, so I think we will get started. Welcome to the live session. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today to learn more about how businesses are using multimodal AI to solve their challenges. Before we get started, I'd just like to take some time to introduce you to our speakers. So first up, we've got James Boother. James is our Chief Technical Officer here at Coeo. Chief Technology Officer here at Coeo. He has been at Coeo for around 12 years and is an expert at bringing technology solutions to life. Joining James, we have Nihao. So Nihao is our head of AI and he joined us from Microsoft. So he has lots of experience with Microsoft technologies. We have got a lot to cover today, but there will be time for your questions at the end. So as we go through, if you have any questions that pop up, feel free to pop them either in the Q&A section or in the chat, and we will address them at the end of the session. And with that, I will hand over to James to get us started.
Thank you, Gemma. Welcome everyone to this session on do you need a multimodal AI strategy? Today we're going to be really looking at how AI works under the hood to give you some understanding of all of the different types of model that are available to you. And then we're going to dive into different models and their strengths and the benefits of combining models together to serve a particular business use case that you've got within your organization. So we'll probably finish the session with a few examples of how we've actually implemented this in the field to bring it to life and give you some ideas about how you might choose to take this forward within your own organization. If we can move on to the next slide, please, Nihal. And then the next one. Great. So AI is already making an impact, and yes, there's a lot of talk about the hype of AI, but research is showing that when AI is deployed within organizations, there's typically a 5 times productivity gain for the individuals. That's actually led to quite a accelerated adoption of AI compared to other technologies in businesses over recent years, with over 72% of businesses adopting AI within their organization. This number is supposed to be the official adoption of AI, and I'm aware from my experience working with organizations that there are lots and lots of end users that are getting their own AI accounts from the big vendors and are finding that they get their own personal productivity gain. So that could well be much higher than that. It's just that that's not actually representative of where it's formally been introduced within an organization. It's anticipated that the whole market value is about $4.4 trillion worldwide, and 85% of Fortune 500 companies have adopted Azure OpenAI. And that product is less than 2 years old. So it's a phenomenal penetration into market of a very early technology, which I think demonstrates what the opportunity is around AI. And we are really just at the beginning of it. The reports also show that for every £1 spent on AI, there's a return of investment of £5. I do believe that you need to get to a critical mass of adoption within the organization to see this return on investment, but it once again demonstrates what the value of investing in AI is for you and your organization. And it's anticipated that AI will add £550 billion to the UK's GDP by 2035. That will require us all to be really forward thinking in our use of the technology within our organisations, and start adopting it and for real business value, and changing the way that we work to create efficiencies and new opportunities within the organisations we work within. If I could have the next slide, please, Nihal. And if you just open it all up. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Nihal. So the purpose of this slide is just to bring everyone together on the same page. Often when I speak to prospects, there's a discussion about how young AI is as a technology. Whilst generative AI has been in the market since about 2021, artificial intelligence itself really started as far back as the 1940s, and Alan Turing really started the field of artificial intelligence within the computer science academic community in the late 40s. And by 1950, he had published his paper on computing machinery and intelligence, which he proposed the Turing test. And the idea there was that a artificial system, a computer, would be able to have the intelligence of a human being. And the concept was that you'd be able to ask questions of the artificial intelligence and it would be able to respond, and there would be little to no difference in the experience that the user should expect from the system as they would from a real human. The technology didn't really exist to support it, so it was all very academic at that point. But by the 90s, we were beginning to see machine learning take hold within the industry, and we could build models that would allow data scientists, predominantly, and computer scientists to be able to produce predictions about what might happen given a set of data. Again, the compute was probably not quite there for what the academia were trying to achieve, but by 2017 we were seeing deep learning models, and that's where layers of machine learning neural networks are built together with feedback loops that allow much more intricate processing of data and make much more informed decisions, and neural nets were really considered at that point. By 2021, generative AI had come to the scene, and this is where the models were being trained with vast quantities of data from the internet. And that has really accelerated the use of AI within organizations and made it much more accessible to individuals. Nihal's now going to go on and describe in more detail about how AI models actually work under the hood, generative AI, to give you all the context from which we can continue the session.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people on the call. And yeah, generative AI has really changed the world that we live in, especially where AI has now become something that everyone speaks about. ChatGPT, these kind of technologies is now something that people adopt in their day-to-day lives. And how does that work under the hood? How is it able to give us such accurate human-like predictions of words? How can we tell it ask it to tell us a story, summarize a document, or create a poem, and it's accurately able to generate information that it may not have been trained on. These large language models have been trained on a very significant amount of data, but the way that they've been trained on the data is in order to, it's been given multiple different sentences, and each of these sentences are mapped out based on semantic similarity. So a word like cat and dog will be closer to each other than a word like plane and dog, for example. They, them, each of these words in the training data is mapped out, and the similarity of these words based on how semantically similar they are allows you for more accurate predictions. So in this instance, what happens is when we use ChatGPT, when we use these large language models, we give it a prompt. And in this instance, we're saying not all heroes wear, and we stopped it there. When we pass it to the large language model, there's so many words that can work. There's pants that can work. There's socks that can work. But capes is the most likely answer. One, based on the training data. Two, based on the semantics of the data, with capes being more closely related to the sentence to any of the other words available to us. And this is why these large language models can predict words in such an accurate manner. And in this instance, it will be not all heroes wear capes. And the main reason behind this is something called position encoding. And that brings me on to my next slide, where each word is given mathematical representations. And that's what allows it to understand where and how to position a sentence in a grammatically structured manner. So if we have the prompt, give me one example of a pet animal chasing another pet, what would you normally get the answer? Would you see a cat chases a dog? Would you say a cat chases a lion? The most common answer is actually a dog chases a cat. And it's not necessarily that a cat not may chase a dog. I'm sure we've all seen videos of that actually occurring, but based on the training data, based on that mathematical representation where I showed you that mapping over here, it shows the semantics of where the words are closer to each other, and that results in a dog chases a cat instead of a cat chases a dog. Now, Gen AI has a lot of hype, and this ChatGPT capability, this capability of predicting the next word in a sentence, has really changed the game in actually summarizing, structuring, and getting outputs from unstructured data. But this is why you would never use ChatGPT to do maths, because ChatGPT is predicting the next word in the sentence. These GPT models these large language models are predicting the next word in the sentence. They are not calculating. So if you said like a 10-digit number multiplied by another 10-digit number, it's predicting what that number could be. It is not calculating what that number could be. And that brings me on to the large language models versus what else is there in the market. Now, there's not just ChatGPT out there. There's Gemini, there's Claude, there's all sorts of open source models. There's also Llama. There's a lot of different large language models out there to us. And the whole weight of a large language model is it's got a lot more parameters. And how do I position a parameter? Parameter is essentially how much the processing that a model goes through to give you an output, kind of like the way a human thinks. In the sense, if we're given a question and we're trying to answer that question, the more parameters we have, the more neurons that are connecting to each other to give us a final output of an answer. Large language models are normally used for a wide range of complex tasks, but they can normally take a lot longer to process, and they are trained with massive data sets. On the other hand, something that's increasing in the field of generative AI is small language models, which have less parameters, trained on less data, but they're trained for more specific tasks. So I've seen small language models specifically on legal data to help summarize, analyze, and create contracts. I've also seen small language models trained to a particular language. And I've seen small language models trained on healthcare data, which in turn is just basically it's trained for a more specific, focused data set. Now, if you ask me which one would you rather go for, a large language model or a small language model? And I would say the answer to that is it's based on what you need to do. It's based on your use case. It's based on what you want to achieve. Large language models are normally better for a wide range of tasks, and they can achieve complex tasks because that's what they're built to do. But if you've got a really niche use case, which there's a small language model built for that, you have more control over small language models and even open source models to actually derive outputs. And over the past 2 years, we've had over thousands of large language models and generative AI models being released on the market. And there is actually a ranking system to that assesses which model is the best one for you. Because in essence, what's happening in the background is there's a website which allows you to rank a model based on the output it gives, but you don't know which model is which. So you've got a comparison between two models, you give it the same prompt, and you choose which model you think is the best. And in these model rankings, this website has been a very popular website. If you've not heard of it, it's called lmarena.ai. It's a free website. Anyone can go access it and actually see the different large language models on there. OpenAI has been at the top of these rankings for the longest period of over 18 weeks, with all the way from GPT-4 with GPT-4 Omni, O1, and continuing the GPT-4 Omni line. And within the top 15 models, there's only one open source, which is while the rest are all proprietary. And the reason behind that is not because um, open source is worse in essence. It's more large language models. I mean, the proprietary models have been significantly trained for a long period of time, so they are good at those complex, difficult tasks, right? Open source is getting better, and we're seeing more and more open source as time goes on, and there'll be a time where open source could even be on par with proprietary models. But at the moment, we're seeing OpenAI leading the front. We're seeing Meta. We're seeing even Google with Gemini. And if you actually see in the top number 1 and 2 rankings, we see GPT-4 Omni and Gemini as the number 1 joint rank spot within this arena. And the competition is increasing. We're going to see more and more as time goes on. So it's really important we understand which model is good for what reason, and how can we adopt multiple models in one go? How can we combine Omni model with the O1, with Gemini, with Llama? How can we even put open source models in there? So that brings us on to a bit more of a multi-model approach. So for the next slide, I'm going to hand over to JB to kind of discuss what is a multi-model approach, why do we need it, and what can it do for us? So over to you, JB.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nihal. So we've all learned a bit about how generative AI works and what the different models are and how they perform in the real world. And you may be asking, well, that's great. I can just pick one of those models that are at the top of that list from the comparison website and say, right, I'm going to deploy that model and use that for every use case I've got across my business. And there may be scenarios where that could work for you. But it's worth considering that on Microsoft Azure, there are over 1,800 models available to be used. And there's a reason why there's so many models there. And that, as Nihal has already talked about, is because different models can serve different purposes really well. So it's worth considering taking multiple models and bringing them together to solve a business use case that you might have within your organization. And these are some reasons why you might choose to do that. So as Nihal was saying, with some of these open source models, they can deliver very, very accurate results for specialized tasks, but they're not necessarily appropriate for more generalist tasks. So if your business process that you're trying to automate with a generative AI model can't be solved with one model, what you might choose to do is say, for part of that use case, use model A, and for another part of that use case, use model B, bring those results together and then present those to the user so that you're getting a great experience across the whole use case. You might want to use different models to handle different types of data. So we're seeing much more specialist models being used for images. So the background images that Nihal and I are using today were both generated from an AI model. We didn't use a GPT model for that. We used an image model for that because that is designed for taking text and converting that into an image. Nihal's hopefully, with the demo gods behind him, going to do a demonstration later of where he's going to talk in natural language to a model, and it's going to then process what he's saying. But you might not, that model might not be appropriate for then answering the specific question that's been asked of it. So you could then chain that model to another model that is going to deal with the specific problem, and then be able to use the original model that did the text to speech to convert that back to speech again. And that's a great example of where you could use that in a customer service scenario, and you want the customers to be able to talk to the model and for the model to be able to speak back to the user. We're seeing that as the model developments are changing, different approaches are being taken to solving tasks. So the OpenAI team recently launched the O1 model, and that model is designed to do much deeper inference of the data. The way that that actually works behind the scenes, I believe, is that it actually runs the model multiple times with its own feedback loops to test the results that it's returning and tuning or refining those results every time it runs the model. So that means that it takes some time for that model to operate. And that's great if you're in a situation where you're asking a complex question and you're prepared to wait for that result. But there may be other scenarios where you're trying to create a chatbot, for example, where that model would not be appropriate. So you want to use one of the models that are going to return results much faster, where there's immediate interaction required. Another case is around optimizing the cost. As these models become more complex, they have more data points with them, and they've cost the company, the vendor, a lot of money to train, design, and create. They're also going to cost you a lot per query to run. So that might not, the need might not be there to get the level of results that you require from that more complex model. You can use a simpler model that's going to return the results fast to the user and actually cost you less in consumption costs. So there's an economic benefit to selecting different models as well as a technical benefit as well. So there's some of the key reasons we see that people are taking a multi-model approach to solve challenges around their organization. Let's move on and look at the main benefits that we're seeing in the market. As I've already covered, each AI model has a different strength, and it's important to find the best model for the use case or the task that you're working on within the use case. Using different models can produce different interactive and experiences for your users, so it's important to find the right mix of models that manages the end user experience. And by bringing different models together, we can automate intricate workflows and create a much more complete business process automation through the combination of different models, reducing the amount of manual intervention required by the user. Microsoft have been doing a lot of work around making this accessible to individuals, because up until now, this has all been built around developers within your organization bringing the data from all of the different APIs together and then calling out to the different models, you need to put a lot of framework around that to create the chain of thought, as it's described, so that there's context within the use of the models, and it makes it a natural experience for your end users. You also need to think about governance and guardrails, etc. So there's a lot of complexity to trying to use multiple models to solve a single use case, which is why Microsoft have been developing a solution around that. And Nihal's going to describe that in a bit more detail now.
Yeah, thank you, JB. And yeah, as JB mentioned, Microsoft have been releasing so many different services in accordance to AI, all built for and with their Azure OpenAI service. And we've come to a point where just recently, a couple of weeks ago, they announced a service called Azure AI Foundry. And I've been working with these large language models and different technologies, large language models, especially even before ChatGPT was released. So I actually saw the hype, the output of these kind of technologies coming to the market. And Microsoft has been continuously taking that feedback and have now adopted and put together a service that has an all-in-one type solution where you've got your Azure OpenAI service, which serves you with the latest and greatest OpenAI models, with a Microsoft wraparound on those models. You've also got your Azure AI Search, which allows you to combine your AI search capabilities with these large language models for a search type of interface to actually search through tons and tons of structured and unstructured data. And we've also got the Azure AI Agent service, which has not been released yet, but it is coming to the market soon. And it's going to be a way for us to easily create agents. And agents is something that Microsoft and even in the entire business of AI, agents are being pushed forward because of the capabilities and because of what they can do. And we're going to speak a bit more about agents as we go on later on in the presentation, but we've also got our AI content safety studio, which basically allows you to build the right guardrails in place to make sure you're moderating the content that's generated, you're making sure the right people have access, you're making sure no harmful, unethical, biased content are being generated by the model. So this studio is an end-to-end type of platform to create your POCs, your pilots, your production solutions, and Microsoft gives you all the resource available, including stuff like agent frameworks like LangChain, AutoGen, Semantic Kernel. They're giving you all the building blocks, all your ingredients to make a full end-to-end solution. And on top of that, you've got your evaluations, customizations, governance, as well as access to both open source, foundational, and different industry-leading models from all the different vendors. And that's the approach Microsoft have decided to take. And I think it's an approach that makes it the easiest as it can be for us to develop and deploy AI solutions at scale. But with, as JB mentioned, over 1,800 models are available on the Microsoft platform. And just to highlight what some of the different models excel at, we've got the O1 model, which was released a couple of months ago now, actually, 3 months ago or so. And this is the most complex model that OpenAI have released. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail in the O1 model in a later slide, but it as James mentioned, the O1 model follows something called chain of thought. It's basically generating information, looking at what is generated, looking at what the input was, and then regenerating this information. In a way, you could say that AI is second guessing itself to give you an output. And the O1 model is best suited for complex tasks. Tasks that say, create me a 100-page report with these policies in place, with this information, and so on. And you can have confidence that there's going to be a pretty good degree of accuracy and analysis done within that report. You can use this model to do many different tasks. I've seen a lot of developers use this model to actually write um, long strands of code, almost 1,000 lines of code that they can immediately go run and actually realize some sort of application. So it's also really good at code generation. Where O1 would not excel, though, is chatbots, conversational platforms. You don't want to have a conversation with something that takes a significant amount of time to give you an output. So the most suitable models for that is the GPT-4 Omni, the GPT-4 Turbo models, which are suited for your chatbot end-to-end conversational approach, where you can talk to an AI and AI will give you a response in milliseconds. We've also got, just recently released as well, is the GPT-4 Omni real-time preview. And that is basically a speech-to-speech bot, which allows speech in, speech out. And we've actually got a demo of this coming soon, which this is the most suited for customer service, support, interview agents. And where this is different is previously when we had to create speech-to-speech, we would have to have a speech recognition model. We would also have to have a model that takes our speech, prints it to text, and there would have to be a multi-layered approach to actually have speech in, speech out. But with this model, you've directly got a model that you can converse with and get outputs with. It still requires combination with different models and services, but it does the majority of the work for you. And then you've got your GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 models, which are older models, but I would say GPT 3.5 especially is more of a cost-saving chatbot. It is significantly cheap and significantly quick. And you've also got GPT-4, which is just an improvement on GPT 3.5 in regards to generation, accuracy, and efficiency. So these are some of what each model excels at, but there's a reason behind why some of these models excel at different things. One is the size of their training data. Two, in this instance, the GPT, we kind of showcase the GPT model, which the model architecture is very similar with each GPT model. However, with stuff like GPT, Gemini, Claude, they each have a different model architecture and it's each structured differently, meaning that the outputs are different. And of course, you've got certain models that are fine-tuned for specific tasks, open source models, models trained on a specific type of language. That also can be a reason behind a different output. And you've also got the reasoning behind these models. And that's quite interesting because I'm going to go on to talk about the O1 model in more detail to showcase the reasoning. And you've also got obviously the number of parameters which play a big part. So the the more parameters you have, the more thinking steps essentially that's going on, the more neurons that that model has in order to give you an output. And this one's quite funny because the next slide is actually going to talk more about reasoning. So this O1 model has released what I think around 3 months ago, and what it's really done is it's allowed for chain of thought. So it's the, as James mentioned before, it's basically taking in your input and output and looking at that and regenerating information. So it's kind of following a step-by-step process. You ask it to do something, it's going to verify what it's done, it's going to check, wait, have I done it correctly? It's then going to regenerate information and then verify that and then give you an output. So it's one, it's catching its own mistakes. Two, this model could potentially be used for maths as well. To be fair, you are still predicting words. However, because the model is going back on itself based on what is generated, it's thinking about what it said and then it's regenerating the information. So it's basically trying multiple approaches, which allows for the advanced reasoning. But in caveat of that, it does mean that we're taking a longer time to actually generate information. So JB, do you think this O1 model can really have an impact in this space, and what can it do for customers and then people, organizations that want to use this model?
Yeah, certainly, Nihal. I think where you've got much more reasoning required, the OpenAI model O1 model can really help. I've in my own personal experience, my eldest is studying mathematics at university, and he was struggling with a concept in statistics that he was struggling with understanding the notation for. So we used the O1 model together to ask specific questions around the problem that he was working on. and it was able to guide him through and explain to him so he could get a better understanding of the particular algorithm that he was trying to work through, and behaved like a tutor. And I think this is different from what we saw from GPT-4 and from other models, earlier models, where they were just answering very specific questions, whereas this had a much deeper reasoning over the problem, and it was then able to provide some guidance on how to approach the learning objective of that individual. Another example that we've seen this used for is when looking at legal documents and taking vast quantities of information, bringing that together, and then asking questions across all of those documents. So helping a solicitor or a compliance officer understand contextually what they are trying to ask questions of a legal document. So, for example, you might have a legal document where you want to understand what your limits of liability are across all of the contracts that you've got within your organization. Now, that was very difficult to ask them before because that might be expressed differently on each contract. But the O1 model reasoning over that and checking its own thinking or its own responses. I don't really want to go as far as thinking, checking its own responses and then verifying those itself before it gives back its answers means that you've got a much more secure response from the model than you would have previously had. It also goes a lot further in describing how it's achieved the results for you, which helps you understand the approach that the model's taken, and that gives you the confidence to and the context from which it's made its decision, so that you can then test any assumptions that it's built into the response that it's provided to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, JB. That's really, really useful. And speaking of how it actually generates and explains the generation, we've got a quick video over here, and I'm going to kind of speak through the video as time goes on, but you can kind of see the way Omni has tried to fill out a crossword. It's just guessed over here, and it's guessed the input and it said, okay, this is what I think the output is, and it's clearly got the answer wrong, right? Now, the same thing with the O1 preview, you can see there's a chain of thought that's going on. First thing it's doing is understanding the grid. Second thing, it's trying to solve the crossword based on the clues. What could the different answers be, right? And based on all that information, it is then filling out the crossword and giving us an explanation. This is an explanation behind the reason of why it's escaped, why it's stayed, and why these are the different answers. And overall, it was able to get it right because this isn't just generating an output based on an input. This is thinking about what it's doing. When you ask it to do, again, the word thinking, it's a little bit here and there. But when I say the word thinking, it's when it's approaching a input step by step instead of doing it all in one go. So as you can see over here, first it assessed, right, let me first work out what the different words are. Then let me work out how the words fit together. Then let's put it in the grid and check if they follow all the different steps. Then let's give the final output compared to the GPT-4 Omni, which just said this is what the crossword would look like filled in, right? This is the difference between reasoning and chain of thought and just input and output. And this brings me on to my next slide, and this is a little bit about where AI is going forward. What are we seeing more of? What are we seeing our customers adopt? And there's something called AI agents, and it's an interesting word actually. And what are AI agents? AI agents are basically the capability to define an AI to do a particular task and combine that with different agents to fulfill a complete business process. So let's take the legal industry, for example. You could have an AI agent that's used for contract writing. You can have an AI agent that's used for contract analysis. You could have an AI agent that is used for email assistant. So one analyzes the contract, one creates the contract to be sent back to a client, one creates the email for that. So now all those agents are coming together. They're functioning different tasks in order to give to you a final output. And in this example over here, you can see this AI is over here was able to actually go to a code generating agent and execute code in order to print out a graph. And this is something that the large language models can't do on their own. They need access to these functions. They need access to these capabilities, to this data, to be able to perform these kind of tasks. And it's kind of highlighted further in my in this slide over here, where I say something like, "Tell me 6 months of sales figures," and what's happening is the large language model is first understanding the prompt, it is converting that prompt into code, it is passing that to the code the writer agent, which writes the code. It passes that to the code executor agent that executes the code, and then provides all the information back to the code writer agent, and then gives you the final output saying this is the total sales of the last 6 months is X, Y, and Z. So this is how agents kind of can work in collaboration with each other. And something that's going to be built on top of these agents and putting multiple agents together is something called business process automation. And business process automation is effectively the ability, the capability to automate a business function slash process with the capabilities of AI. So we would have different capabilities, different functions, different tasks that AI can do within the process, and automating different things. Now we've actually got a few examples of that with some of our customer stories that we're going to talk about. But with the business process automation, you can automate manual tasks that employees, people spend a lot of time in, that they could be spending their time elsewhere. And at the end of the day, time is money. So to be able to automate mundane manual tasks with AI makes it really powerful. And what's that seen is we've seen figures like reducing costs by up to 37% by automating parts of a business process with the capabilities of AI. And that's also led to improved customer satisfaction when a customer doesn't have to go through step by step talking to different humans, human agents on a call center, talking to different people, trying to get an output, trying to get that problem fixed. Instead, with AI automating different parts, the time to value is a lot quicker for customers too. So that in turn leads to customer increased customer satisfaction. And that brings me on to a little bit of architecture which highlights what business process automation could look like. Where could we automate customer service or interview assistant, or how can we have this kind of speech-to-speech conversation? And on the left over here, you've got the end user talking to the Azure OpenAI speech, and you could see the audio information going back, the beginning interaction, audio information going there, audio text information going to the OpenAI control information, and all that information also being passed back from the OpenAI model. So this is effectively a way of having that real-time speech-to-speech capability with a real-time host. And that is further enhanced by using a different model. So this over here is using a speech model, but if we combine that with the OpenAI model, we can see stuff like real-time summarization, sentiment analysis, key points extracted, and we can also call separate functions to do tasks, and which in turn is also talking a bit about our multi-model approach, where we're using multiple different models to get a bit of an output. And conscious of time, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move on to the demos and go quickly through the demos and show you in real time how some of these demos and capabilities will work together. And hopefully we can finally move on to a few case studies after that. Right. I hope everyone can still see my screen. James, we can still see my screen, right?
Yep, it's just come through.
Brilliant. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo this quickly, and then I'm going to talk about it after, because it's really hard to demo it and talk about it at the same time. But what I've done is I've basically created a multi-model demo of an interview assistant where we've given the model some information about a managed services team lead role we were hiring. And if I start this interview here, hi there.
Hello, I'm your AI assistant for this interview. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. We're looking for a managed services team lead based in the UK with hybrid working arrangements. This role involves leading a team of technical professionals to deliver exceptional managed services to clients, focusing on database administration and customer service. To start, could you please tell me a bit about your background and what drew you to apply for this role?
Of course. So I've worked with SQL databases before. I've worked with different kinds of databases, and I'm always trying to deliver good service for my customers and make sure that they get a good outcome.
Great. It sounds like you have valuable experience with SQL databases and a strong customer service mindset. Can you share an example of a time when you successfully managed a challenging situation with a client or project?
I'm
How
sorry, my English isn't so good. Could you repeat that question in French for me?
Bien sûr, pas de problème. Pouvez-vous partager un exemple d'une situation difficile que vous avez gérée avec un client ou un projet? Comment avez-vous fait pour garantir un résultat positif?
Okay, I'm going to stop it there before I try and speak any French. Unfortunately, I do not know French, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question. But let me explain a little bit about what happened. So we're using this GPT-4 real-time speech model for real-time speech, and I've passed this interview, the job history, as information to actually go off being an interview AI assistant. And you could see over here that one, it was able to talk really human-like. And where this could be really powerful is customer service. How many times do we call up customer service and they put us through some robotic voice and we're talking to a robotic voice about different things? Now we can finally have that conversation with something that's a bit more human-like. And on the right hand side, we've also got a conversation summary that's being generated. And where this is really powerful is if, for example, in the regards to the interview assistant, if someone was real time having an interview with this, they could have their interview constantly analyzed as time goes on, and it could be mapped out to different metrics. Is it following this? Has it got this priority? Has it got this priority? And assessing the candidate's capability as time goes on, similar to customer service. We spend a lot of time talking to people, and then they realize, oh wait, I'm going to have to pass you on to a different agent, and they pass you on to someone else to talk to, and then you have to repeat your problem. That's probably one of the worst things we can experience, actually repeating our problem to another person continuously until we get our problem resolved. By summarizing the transcript, instead we pass that transcript over to the next human that we're going to talk to, and then the human says, oh, so I've seen that you've spoken about X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? We as end users just say, yes, that's correct. You don't have to repeat yourself. That's going to realize a much improved custom experience for all of us. So this is the multi-model demo where we're combining two different models to have an kind of speech to speech capability where you can do interview assistance, customer service, all different kinds of capabilities. And almost every organization has a customer service capability in house. So the next demo, which I'll be very quick, is a bit more of a specific one. And this has the capability of where you can upload documents, images, and transcripts. And what's happening is we've got image analysis being done by a GPT-4 Turbo model. We've also got transcripts being analyzed by the Whisper model. And we've got GPT-4 Omni actually analyzing the different information. So what I've done is I've already preloaded the images, text, and a transcript, and what's happened is it's just gone analyzed. So you could see I was driving into town to visit an elderly lady. Steve and a careless drove back to me. You could see this is the image of his car. You could see the image shows a silver Volvo XC90, and you can also do the transcript text which aligns with the actual uh, statement itself. So when I click the analyze button, what's happening in the background is the way I've built this demo is this is connected to multiple different data sources. This is connected to Steve's claim history. This is connected to Steve's weather conditions. This is connected to telemetry data for Steve's car. And what's happening in the background is it's taking all that information, combining that information, and going step by step to assess whether Steve's claim is trustworthy or not. Effectively, we're investigating the claim. So it's going step by step using the Omni model, which is why it's taking some time to compute, because it's generating multiple different things. And at the end of this, we're actually going to get a final verification score telling us this is the output of the the output of the Steve's insurance claim. So you could see image analysis, which is accurate, transcript analysis, also accurate, weather and traffic conditions, both were confirmed to be cleared on the specified date, aligning with Steve's description, telemetry data, and claim history. Steve has a history of truthful claims, both found true, supporting his reliability. So now we've actually got a final likelihood score assessing 98%. Funny enough, the only discrepancy is the location context, which it's a Nebraska license plate, but Steve has been in Liverpool. And that's just based on the image, which was an image from Google Images, which actually had Nebraska at the bottom. So you could actually see the graphs that were built as well, Steve's, which shows Steve's speed limit, as well as his telemetry map. And over here, you can also see this detailed step by step that which you could see step by step. This is the first one with the claims document and the transcript weather data. You could see step 2, you could see step 3. You could see the different steps the model is taking to get that final likelihood of 98%. So this is effectively working like the O1 model with a GPT-4 Omni model. So this kind of is also using multiple different models, both showcasing a multi-model approach. So yeah, that's a pretty quick, a few pretty quick demos. Now, just to get back to the slides, and we're going to finally be moving on to, do we need it? Do we actually need this capability? And to quickly go through the first success story, this is probably one of my favorite use cases I've worked on. And this was a use case I worked on probably about 1.5 years ago. It's been a while. And we had a healthcare company that they get over 6,000 prescriptions manually every single day, right? And we use the capabilities of OCRing all those prescriptions and using Azure OpenAI to extract the drug name, drug date, frequency, side effects, all the different information, and populate that in a database. And they paid a team of 50 people to manually extract this information, which took over a day. It wasn't possible to actually go through the 6,000 prescriptions. So the multimodal approach we took is we used GPT 3.5 to do a simple extraction of the patient's name and ID number, verify that in the CRM system, and then use GPT-4 to do more complex analysis of the drug name, drug frequency, drug side effects, and then pass that all in a database. And we achieved an accuracy of 99.9% in UAT. And I think a key takeaway is the fact that this resulted in $1.5 million savings, and we had 50 FTE all the way reduced to 5. And those 5 were just human in the loop to actually make sure that the AI was accurate, while the other FTE, full-time employees, were trained to become pharmacists and do more complex roles. Which this goes to show that AI is not going to replace us, but it's going to support us. It's going to allow us to be more efficient and empower us with what we do. So, JB, James,
Great,
I'll
thank you.
pass it over to
Thank
you
you,
for this
Nihal.
success story.
Thanks, Nihal. This is a case where we were working in the legal sector, and the practice wanted help from us to work on creating letters for claims. Previously, it was taking about 2 days to gather all of the different information and correspondence that related to a particular matter, and also research previous case history. They wanted a system that could go through this and provide them with help with lots of similar situations. And they used the data that they had in their business of handling matters for over 30 years that had similar outcomes, and bringing that together. That meant that they could analyze emails, Word documents, transcripts, audio files, video files, and use all of that information to aid the development of a better letter of claim. In order to do this, we made use of multiple models. We brought together GPT-4o to do the chat conversation because that performs very quickly with very low latency. We used the GPT-4 Turbo model to look at all of the images and then convert that into data that could be inferred over. And we built using assistants, which you can think of like the OpenAI agents. And by doing this, we were able to call out to lots of different functions. So it allowed us to then do some maths and produce series information and graphs, etc., that we could bring and combine back together to give the solicitor more insight into the particular claim and how best to tackle the current situation that they were working within. Ultimately, it meant that they could go from spending 2 days doing research to complete a letter to spending 20 minutes working on the research and put a lot more effort and time into positioning the letter in the best possible way for representing their client. It also meant that they could spend more time corresponding with different people and more time engaged with the client, ensuring that they were giving a much higher level of service. Back to you, Nihal.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And this is a customer that we've worked on. We've been continuously working with for their AI platform, and what we've kind of built for them was we created them their own kind of enhanced and private version of ChatGPT built on the Azure OpenAI service. So we built a platform that has access to multiple different models like DALL-E for image generation, GPT-4 Turbo at the time to do image analysis, GPT-4 Omni for the conversational capability, as well as functions to go out to different data sources, upload your own documents, Excel files, PDFs. And we built them an end-to-end application to leverage the capabilities of ChatGPT in a private and secure manner. They don't have to worry about their data going anywhere. They don't have to worry about their data being taken by OpenAI or Microsoft. All their data stays with them, which allows them to analyze critical information and internal documentation, which I just recently looked at how Welcome used this application, and people are using this kind of capability for all different kinds of tasks. I've seen them say stuff like analyze research contracts and then verify whether a contract would be good for an investment. I've also seen Welcome Trust use it for actually more internal purposes, like summarize these documents or reword this email to be more friendly or like-minded, and then actually leverage that. So it allowed for that collaboration and knowledge sharing. And you also have the ability to create custom personas and tailor the model's personality. And this end-to-end solution we built them not only uses different models, but also allows them to have a secure platform where they can use the capabilities of generative AI throughout the organization. So we've got over almost 2,000 plus people using this application on a database basis. Every time I refresh the data, you see more and more chats that people are having, people are using. So we built an end-to-end successful solution using the capabilities of generative AI and Azure. And one thing that's really important with these solutions is to be responsible and ethical. We don't want anyone to put in information that they shouldn't be. We don't want anyone to be having unethical conversations with the models. So it's really important that we are particular about both responsible AI and ethical AI. So, James, I appreciate we're almost running out of time here. So, if anyone's got questions, please do leave it in the chat and we will try our best to answer them. But, James, could you tell us a little bit about responsible and ethical AI and how that's having an impact in the business today?
Yes, definitely. So It's really really important to think about responsible and ethical AI. It's all very well to build models that have great capability, but if they're not founded upon good principles, then you're not going to be able to trust the results. That could be bad for you as an individual and as an organization, because you're not going to be able to explain how these results have been created. And that could then be construed as being unfair by people that are having decisions made based on the output from these models. That would potentially create some reputational damage for your organization, but also, possibly even more seriously, we're beginning to see legislation close in on AI. So, in time, AI laws will come into place. The European Union are probably the furthest ahead with this. We expect the UK and the US to follow in short order as well. In order to remain responsible and ethical, Microsoft have created some great support around this, around content moderation, to ensure that the content being provided back from the model is safe for consumer consumption. You can add custom filters on top of that to make sure that it adheres to policies that you define within your organization. It's also important to consider data encryption so that the data is protected from the outside world. All of the solutions that we build within a private subscription within Microsoft Azure to give you the control and access control over that data and prevent unauthorized access to the models and to the output of those models. Back over to you, Nihal, just to talk about the framework for building
Brilliant.
safety layers in.
Brilliant. Thank you, JB. And I think responsible and trustworthy AI is one of the most important aspects that we need to take into consideration. We need to protect ourselves from stuff like hallucinations, unethical responses. We need to know what we're getting from a large language model or generative AI in general is accurate. We don't want to be in a position where we're doubting the output. So, and it's also a case of making sure that people don't misuse these technologies. We can't go to this technology and say something rude about this individual, or make sure you're always favoring this or that, right? It's making sure that we mitigate all of these issues. And some of the safety layers we need to have in place is we've got a framework that we put in place with all of our solutions. So first step is the user experience and user interface. We only give users as much access as they need to complete the task or achieve what they're aiming to do. We do not keep it so that there's any way they can access someone else's data or find some other information that they shouldn't be looking at. We make sure the user experience has all that it does to enable an easy and accurate functions of achieving a particular task. So the user experience, what the people look at, what the people use is really important. And then you've also got your meta prompt and grounding, which is effectively your prompt engineering. Your prompt engineering and providing it with your own data. The way you prompt engineer, write your inputs, write your questions is significantly important in actually attributing an output. So the way we provide it with the right amount of data, the way we structure the system message, the prompt, will allow us to get rid of those hallucinations, be as accurate as possible. Because if we give these large language models data and say only answer information from this data, it's more likely not to hallucinate and provide those responses that are inaccurate. We also have the safety system that James spoke a bit about, which is to make sure we're moderating all this content and ensuring no unethical information is put in. No one can put in swear words, unethical responses, harmful content. None of that can be put in because we've got a safety system in place that gets rid of all of that. That information doesn't even go to the model itself. So we've got a layer that prevents any bad information from going to the model, which acts as our safety system. And finally, all this capability is built on the model, where the model needs to be tailored from its system message to its prompt to its actual parameters, removing the temperature to as low as possible to make sure it doesn't hallucinate, and ensuring we've got the safety layers in place for responsible and ethical AI solution. So quickly, let's go on to who we are and how we've been a business for the past 15 plus year. And James has been with the business for 12 years or so now, so he can definitely explain this really, really well. So JB, over to you to finish this off.
Thank you, Nihal. Just before we get to that, there have been some great questions come up in the Q&A that I really want to pose to you. The
Yep.
first one from Seth was, are agents only language models, or can they be trained to do actions off the back of conversations? I.e., if someone says this, open this web page, click here, etc., can the model respond to that?
That's a good question, right? And to answer your question, can they train to do actions off the back of conversations? For example, absolutely, right? The agents only behave in the way you structure them to be. So agents is really just a fancy word of a flow for a language, for a flow for a generative AI solution, where you define what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and what it needs to achieve. So you don't agents are language models, but it's not just language models that you're talking back and forth with a chat interface. It can also be trained to, if they see a conversation going on, or if, as you said, if someone says this, right, then an agent in the background is monitoring what's going on. It identifies, look, someone said this, let me open this web page and complete this task. So agents are using the word intelligent is a bit, but intelligently, right, doing a task and function to achieve what you want to do in a simplistic manner. So absolutely, agents can also be trained to do actions off the back of conversations, very similar to how our speech to speech model worked. While we were having a conversation, it can actually monitor, okay, so the individual has said that they're really good at SQL database, we can tick this off the list, for example. Or the individual has said that their order number is 12345. Let's go find that order number in the database and retrieve the information of where their package is. So absolutely, it can be used to do actions off the back of different conversations.
Brilliant.
And that
Thanks,
is a really good
Nihal.
question.
We had another great question from Liam. Working in the insurance industry, the example of the automated claims analysis is brilliant. With this much data, client data being fed into the models, how can we be sure that this data is protected and secure when feeding into multiple models at once?
That's also a great question, and it's as you have said, right? It's what the insurance industry is a very heavily regulated industry, and when we're feeding a lot of information to these models, right, we need to make sure we've got the right guardrails in place. And one being using the Azure platform, having your data on Azure, as well as using the Azure OpenAI service, is one, ensuring that this data does not go to Microsoft or OpenAI, and two, you can secure the approach of how this data is being provided to these models in order to provide you with an output. So all the models we're using sit on the Azure OpenAI service, and Azure and OpenAI strictly say that any data you feed in or feed out or gets generated is your data, and no one else is going to have access to that data but you. So with that, with the leverage of those models, we can then combine this with like a Cosmos database or a different data source to actually embed client information or retrieve information from these different data sources. So keeping it all at one platform, not going to the public internet or public models, allows us to be secure with using these multiple models and using that approach. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Nihal. And one more. Does the Microsoft Enterprise or 365 licenses provide a secure ring-fenced environment so that data is secure and permission handling is taken care of?
That's also an interesting question. Unfortunately, and James, unless you know more about Microsoft 365 licensing,
So I think what's interesting here is that there's often a little bit of confusion because Microsoft have overloaded the same term multiple times all over the place. So if we're looking at the M365, we're probably talking about Copilot. which is part of M365. It's really important if you're deploying Copilot to be thinking of sensitivity labels and of the information architecture within your SharePoint sites, within Teams, within the way that you've got your O365 graph set up, because essentially it's going to build the permissions for the data that's available to you to use within Copilot based on the way that you've configured your Microsoft 365 environment. That's not an area of our particular expertise. We're much more focused on the OpenAI service running in Azure. There is integration coming between Microsoft Copilot and the work that we've been doing in Azure using the OpenAI service and other large language models using the AI Foundry toolkit that's available from Microsoft. Within the Azure environment, Nihal's already done a great job at explaining how we can protect the data. It sits within your subscription, it doesn't leave your subscription, and the models that are being used within that, it's guaranteed that they're not going to be used for the data is not going to be used for training purposes because your data never leaves your environment. I hope that answers the question that you asked of us, Stuart. If you do have any follow-up questions, then don't hesitate to ask us. In the interest of time, I'm just going to move on and finish the rest of the slides that we've got in the deck. As Nihal said, we're a company of about 15 years old. We're just over 100 staff based in the UK and in Hyderabad. And we're delighted with the engagement that we have with our clients, with over a 97% a retention of the clients that we work with. We've got a Microsoft partner designation in data and AI and Azure. We're also a specialist partner. This means that we have an annual independent audit of the work that we do, and we have to meet stringent criteria from Microsoft in order to be able to qualify to take those external audits. And we have that in AI and machine learning and in analytics and in infrastructure and database migrations into Azure. We love working as a team together, and we love integrating with the clients that we work with and have achieved best place to work for many years as a team. Nihal, could you move on to the next slide, please?
Yeah, of course.
When we engage with clients, we typically work on a data and AI strategy to ensure that there's vision, culture, and governance aligned to the work that you're doing, and that the work you are doing aligns to what the organizational objectives are, to make sure that everyone is successful in the solution that is built. That then often leads on to a data platform engagement, a data analytics engagement, artificial intelligence engagement, or data virtualization engagement. What I'd really like to move on to is how you could move forward with a project if you have been inspired what we've talked about today. We've been very focused on OpenAI today, and we've got a set of transformation workshops that we can deliver for you that will get you started on a AI project. We can then move into a proof of concept with you and then move on to deploying that into a production environment. The great news is that we're working very closely with Microsoft, and there's potential Microsoft funding available to you to get started on these projects. So for little or possibly even no cost, you can get engaged with us, and we can start working on some initial use cases with you. You may find that you actually need to work on your data that underpins the AI initiative that you've got. And we're doing a lot of work with Microsoft Fabric at the moment as the underlying data platform and analytics architecture to provide you with reporting and data insights. Again, we've got a set of workshops, a Fabric in 5 days, which is a pilot, and then production deployment against that. We've got lots of clients that are using relational databases, SQL Server, and open source databases, and we're assisting clients in migrating those into Azure so the data is near to the OpenAI service and allows you to have much more control over the use of that data in your AI models. And again, we can support you with the migration of that workload into Azure and the modernization of that platform. And finally, I'd just like to share some upcoming events that may be of value to you. We've got an AI hackathon coming up in January 2025. The idea of this is that you bring a team with us and at the Microsoft UK headquarters in Thames Valley Park in Reading. The hackathon runs over 2 days. And we encourage you to bring business representatives and technical representatives to come together and try out an AI use case. Nihal will be on hand along with other consultants that have some great experience in delivering AI and data projects into our clients' environments, and it means that you can bring a concept to life and test it out over that 2-day period. The day is completely free of charge. So you just need to commit your time as a team and bring your ideas, and we can work with you to take that forward. The other thing that we've got coming up is preparing your AI strategy. That's another webinar that Nihal and I will be delivering on the 22nd of Jan. And you can find all of these events on coeo.com/events, which Nihal has very kindly brought up in his web browser. I apologise that we ran over slightly today, but there was so much content to share, we couldn't pack it in to the time frame we initially proposed for today's webinar. So I very much appreciate you all staying on slightly longer to listen through to the whole thing. And we wish you the very best with your AI journey. And thank you, Nihal and Gemma, for being part of the webinar as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoyed the session.